Hello, chair yogis. Welcome to this first class in the active chair yoga series. Because this is the first class, we're going to be practicing our beginner mind as we move through the poses that will set the tone and the foundation for everything that follows. You'll want a yoga strap for this practice. If you don't have one, then you could also use a belt, a scarf, or a dish towel. Any one of these should do the trick. So pause the video here if you need to get yourself set up. Otherwise, let's get started. So we're practicing beginner mind today, and just to be clear, this is something that you can practice whether you're doing this class for the first time, the 5th time, or the 50th time, because it's really something that you can practice whenever you want and at any skill or experience level. It really doesn't matter. So let's come forward in our chairs. So slide yourself forward till you're perched on the front edge and just plant your feet on the floor. Hands can just be resting on the lap, and if you'd like, you can close your eyes because that sort of does help to turn your focus inward. But if you're not comfortable with that, then by all means leave your eyes open. It's really up to you. And just start this process of kind of settling into your body and becoming aware of your breath. And we'll take a moment here today to connect with the qualities we associate with being a beginner. So what are those? Curiosity, perhaps? Open-mindedness? Maybe a lack of ego or expectation? A sense of wide open potential, and really permission to be bad at anything, because hey, if we're all beginners here, then what do we know, right? And if you'd like, you can pick a quality of beginner mind that you'd like to work with and set that as your intention for your practice. So if you'd like, bringing the palms together, hands into the heart, and just fueling that intention with your breath. And just a couple more breaths here. Releasing preconceptions on the exhale and making space for something new on the inhale. And when you're ready, you can release the hands, and if the eyes are closed, you can open them now. All right, let's get started with our movements. So to begin, this is actually a really good place to bring in your strap, belt, scarf, dish towel, whatever it is. And just grasp it so that the hands are slightly wider than shoulder width, let's say. And then reach that up overhead. So we're going for length through the spine here. So really press up through the hands, get nice and tall. You can even shrug the shoulders up to the ears if you'd like. And then from here, a little wiggle side to side. Now, if you don't feel stable here, you can set the feet a little bit wider. And instead of leaning to the side, stay more or less centered and just think of pressing out through the armpit and the rib cage on whatever side you're wiggling towards. And then bring yourself to center, press up, look up, big breath in. And exhale, let it all go. Now we'll do something similar, but with the strap behind us. So I'm going to turn just so you can see this. You may want to turn as well if you don't have enough space between you and the chair when you're facing forward. So again, I'm going to find a comfortable distance between the hands on my strap, and then I'm going to reach them out back behind me. As I do this, I'm squeezing the shoulders back, lifting up through the heart, and maybe even looking up slightly. If once you're in the pose, you feel like you could even wiggle your hands a little closer together on the strap, you could do that as well. And then again, see if there's any room for a little bit of a wiggle side to side through the arms here. And release. And you can put the strap aside for the moment. Just have it handy because we will bring it in again. And we'll set up for the seated version of cat and cow. So typically this is a pose that's performed on the floor in a table pose. But here what we'll do is we'll cup the knees with the hands and start off by pulling on the knees to bring the belly and the chest forward, and the chest will even lift up. The shoulders will press back, look up slightly. And then to come into the other version, you'll tuck the tail under. So the tail scoops under and forward. Your back will press out behind you. It feels like it's rounding into a kind of banana shape. And then you'll lift up through the shoulders and drop the chin down to the chest. And then all you do is kind of go back and forth between those two poses to limber up the spine a little bit. And again, the hands are pulling you forward as you lift up through the heart, and then you're kind of hanging off the knees as you come back. Good, and a couple more of these. Moving through the shoulders as well, so not forgetting about them. And then bringing yourself to neutral. And just shaking everything out. So you might even just sort of shrug the shoulders a few times in case you're feeling it there. And next we'll come into some more movement for our shoulders and our core muscles. So bringing the arms into cactus. So if you're not able to bring the elbows too high, then wherever feels comfortable. But if you can raise them up to shoulder level, that's awesome. And to begin, we'll keep our torso in place. So that'll stay, and the arms will just move around the body. So just feeling for how much range of motion you have here through the shoulders. And then letting the arms down and shaking everything out. Again, if it feels good to shrug the shoulders a few times, you can do that. Really releasing when you drop them. And then reset the arms, and this time the arms will stay locked as if they were one long line, and it'll be the body that moves. So the arms kind of stay flat and wide in space. And we'll come over to one side into a twist and hold. And this pose is harder than it looks. So if you're feeling it, don't worry about that. You should be. This is one that works the core muscles, the obliques, the scapular muscles, the lats. Holding for one more breath, and then return back to center, shake out the arms. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. So lifting up through your arms and twist to the side. And it's almost like a spiral that begins in the waist. So you start turning from there, and then the rest of the body spirals up from there. So turning over to the side. Try to sit up tall here. Maybe lift the elbows if they've dropped. And then gently releasing, coming back to center, and release, shake out. And just to let the shoulders go a bit more, let's roll them forward for a few circles. And then reverse direction and roll them back. And then we'll come into a hip rock. So I like to start this one just sort of by swaying side to side. Noticing that as I sway to one side, that hip will tend to get heavy and the other hip will get light. And maybe the hip that gets light even lifts up off the chair a little bit. It doesn't have to, but just something to get curious about. Yeah, can that happen? And sometimes I'll even let my neck be kind of loose so that my head trails and I feel like I'm doing my best impression of a seaweed plant underwater, and it just feels good. And then we'll come into another version where we keep ourselves more or less stacked and in place, and the movement is more isolated to the hips and the waist. So you'll still travel a little bit side to side, but it's no longer seaweed, no longer the seaweed effect. Good. And then bring yourself back to center. And from here, we'll set up for our standing poses. Okay. So bring yourself up to standing. And you're going to bring yourself actually to behind your chair, hopefully facing me, but I am going to spin my chair just so that you have a better angle to see this from. So we're going to come into a calf stretch here. So one foot forward and the other foot back. And how much back really depends on how much stretch you want. So if my stance is a little shorter, I'll be feeling a little less in the calf muscles. If I bring that foot a bit further back for a longer stance, I'm going to feel it more. Just make sure that you have both sets of toes tracking forward. So it's almost like the feet are on parallel railroad tracks. So get curious about the position of the back foot. You might try different distances, and then once you've found something that seems to work, and you can always adjust this later, just raise and lower the heel. And this is just to warm up the calf muscles. So checking in with how this feels in the leg. If you need to adjust the position of the foot, you can. And then coming into the sustained stretch. So dropping the back heel towards the floor. Now it doesn't have to touch the floor, but you're holding it as you press it down in the direction of the floor. And just hold for a couple breaths here. And then release. And you can tap that foot out a few times just to let any tension go. And then we'll stretch the top of the foot. So we're going to come onto the toenails, so flipping the toes over. And just again, feel the difference when you pick different positions for the foot here. And the idea is you're pressing the ankle forward to stretch through the top of the foot. And another thing you can do is just shift the heel or the ankle side to side, because that'll move the stretch from side to side a little bit. And the other thing you can do is pick a position for the foot and just bend the knees and see what that does to the stretch. Now, because we don't tend to stretch our feet a lot in this direction, you may get a foot cramp. That's quite common. Don't be alarmed. The next stretch will help that out. So bring the undersides of the toes down now, so the toenails are back on top. And again, play with the position of the foot. You're trying to bring the stretch to the underside of the toes. And again, the ankle is pressing forward. You can wiggle the ankle side to side so you get the stretch more through the underside of the big toe or the pinky toe, depending which way the foot is leaning. And you can also try bending the knees here, just to explore the stretch and how it changes. And then release, tap the foot out. And you can shake both legs out in case there's any tension again. And then we'll come into the other side. So the other foot will be forward, the other leg will be back. And with your beginner mind, being really open to the possibility that this side may feel quite different than the first one did. So the positioning of the foot might be different here, but once you've found it, just start to raise and lower through that back heel. Warming up the calf muscles, and when you're ready, pressing the heel down to hold. There's this really great quote by Shunryo Suzuki where he says, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. Releasing the foot. Let's come into the top of the foot stretch. So coming onto the toenails. And again, exploring different positions. Pressing the ankle forward and maybe a little bit side to side. And again, different positions as you perhaps bend the knees. And then flipping the toes. So this is where we stretch the underside of the toes. So you might give some weight to the toes and also press the ankle forward. You might lean the foot, the ankle, from one side to the other. You might bend the knees a few times just to see how that feels. And then just tap the foot out a few times to let go. And even bring yourself up and shake out one leg and then the other. Next, we'll come into two poses very commonly practiced in yoga, but of course we'll be doing the chair supported version. The first one is downward dog. So both hands on the chair, you're facing the back of your chair. Make sure you have lots of space behind you for this one. And you'll start off by walking back until the arms are stretched out nice and long, and then even back a little further. You're wanting to come kind of in a tabletop position almost, where the upper body is starting to come down in space, and as it does, have some bend in the knees. This is going to protect the hamstrings so you don't strain the muscles in the backs of your legs. And then from here, lift up through the tail. So it's really that feeling of sticking your butt out here. And then coming down and forward through the upper body, seeing if you can drop the head between the arms, or at least lower it towards the arms. So we know this pose as downward dog or Adho Mukha Svanasana. Feeling for that length through the spine. And then to come out of the pose, rising up as you walk the feet in. And this can be in little baby steps, no rush. Until you're back up. And just maybe give yourself a few shoulder rolls here to soften through the shoulders. And then we'll come into upward dog or Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. So standing so that there's, about this much space between you and the chair, holding onto the back, and just rock your weight forward and back a few times. So I'm kind of like tipping my weight into the balls of the feet and then into the heels. And then I'll pour my weight into the balls of the feet and drift the hips forward. Now it's not a back bend where we're hinging at the waist. We just drift the hips forward and then start to lift up through the chest. So I kind of feel this sense of stretch and lengthening through the front of my body. I drop the shoulders back and down, and then I'll look up slightly. So I'm not cranking my head back. I'm just lifting my gaze a little bit. Holding for one more breath. And then easing out, coming forward. And we are going to do that one again because I feel like it is a bit of an odd position and it can be a bit bewildering. So just you know, see how that first one went, and if you want to do this one more subtly, or maybe you go in a little deeper, maybe lift a little higher, completely up to you. So resetting here. If it was too much to look up, then just keep your gaze forward. So again, weight pours into the fronts of the feet, hips drift forward, chest lifts up. You might lift the shoulders up, send them back, and then slide them down. And you might keep the gaze forward if that works better for you. Especially if you tend to get dizzy, it might be nice to just find a spot on the wall in front of you to focus on. Otherwise, maybe lifting the gaze up a little bit. Good. One more breath here. And then release. Hips drift back. You can walk away from the chair. And again, shake everything out. And now we're ready for hip circles. So facing the chair again. Walk back a little bit so there's a little more space. So you have room to circle. Feet nice and wide. And we'll start off with little circles to begin. So see if you're able here to get curious about that, what this does to your hips, how that feels. You might even pretend that this is your first time in this body. Maybe your first time having hips. And what does that feel like? And then let's circle the other way. And just noticing how the leg bones kind of stir in the hip sockets. And if you want, you can expand these circles a little larger, so there might be a little bit more lean through the upper body as well. And then start to draw those circles a little smaller and smaller until you're back in center. And then again, release the pose, hold on to the chair for a moment, just as you shake out the legs. All right, so we're going to come into some poses that we're going to do on either side of the chair. So a couple options as far as setup. So if your chair is in place like so and you want to keep it there, you don't want to be moving the chair more than you need to, that's fine. Just make sure that when you're standing sideways with your hand on the chair, that you're not so far forward that you push the chair back and it tips on you. I find it's helpful to maybe stand, if anything, a little behind the back of the chair, and then it's a little less tippy. However, more stable than that would actually be to just turn the chair like so and stand beside it this way. So it's completely up to you. I'll give you a moment to do that. This just takes the work of moving the chair, but you know, if I push on it, it doesn't feel like it's going to tip much on me. All right. So we're setting up for a goddess pose. And for this, we want the feet nice and wide, quite a bit wider than hip width. And to begin, I just want you to just bend the knees a few times. You don't have to go very deep. This is just to check in with where the knees want to go in space. And then once you've got that, coming down and just seeing if the angle of the knees is matching the angle of the feet, because quite often the feet are a little turned in, or they're maybe a little wider than the knees. So just reset the feet so that they're tracking at the same angle. All right, and this is sort of the alignment that is safest for the knees. So that's definitely what we want. Come down into goddess, which is kind of a squat, or you might think of it as a plie if you're dance inclined. And then from here, we're going to shift our weight towards the chair. So just traveling sideways until the outside foot is light enough that you can lift the heel up and then let it down. Travel through center over to the outside and lift the other heel up and down. Come back through center and rise up. Float that outer arm up and then reach overhead and over to the opposite wall for a side bend. From here, you might think of tipping the top shoulder forward to look down to the floor. And then returning it up and even sending it back so you're looking up at the ceiling. And then inhale the arm up. Exhale to release, shake it out. And let's do that one more time now that you have an idea of the sequence and how things work. So coming down into goddess, and you could have the arm lifted if you sort of want to bring more effort or into the arm, or just practice the grace of a ballet arm. So coming down. And from here, drifting the weight towards the chair. So the outside heel lifts. We're strengthening the feet here as well as the legs. So over to the other side, heel lifts up. Bring yourself back to center and rise up. And then outside arm is going to reach up and over. Maybe spinning the top shoulder down, gaze down. Maybe spinning the top shoulder back and looking up. Inhale to lift up and exhale to release. Bring the feet in and shake everything out. Now this is a place where you may want to bring your prop in. We're going to come into crane pose, so have that handy. We'll start off without though. So you're going to be a little bit closer into your chair, and I just want you to raise and lower the outside leg 3 times. So you're lifting up the knee as high as you can get it, drop it down, and again, and then last time, and then let it down, shake it out. So we're practicing our mobility here, our strength and coordination in moving the leg up and down. So now it'll be the chair side leg, the inside leg, that lifts up and down 3 times. And release, shake it out. Same thing with the outside leg again. So you might inhale to lift up, exhale to come down. And again. And last time, maybe give it a little bit of a squeeze at the top, and then release, shake it out. And now we'll work our flexibility a bit more by bringing in the strap perhaps. So if you have trouble holding the leg up by cupping the knee in the hand or having the hand under the thigh, if that's not available to you, then perhaps the prop will help you here. If you bring it under the leg and then pull up. So just adjusting the hand where it needs to be to have a good grip and a good lift, okay? So whatever version you're doing, the object here is to hug the knee up and in. So using your arm strength. And as well, getting curious about the glutes on the standing leg. If you squeeze them, can you stand a little taller? Holding for one more breath. And then release. Instead of just dropping the leg, see if you can mindfully, slowly let it down, really gently, and then shake everything out. And in case you're feeling that in the hip flexors on the outside leg, let's come into a stretch for that. So option 2, bring your prop in and just loop the front of the leg. And then lifting the leg up like so, maybe shortening the length between your hand and the foot so you can bring it in closer. Another option for this one, if you can't just grab the ankle behind you with the hand, is to bring the leg forward instead. The hand might come to the knee, and you might even lean forward so you have more access, more reach to bring the hands to slide down the shin to the ankle, and from there stand nice and tall. And no matter how you're coming into this pose, the objective is to send that bent knee down towards the floor. So you're like reaching it down and sending it back. At the same time, with the hand, you're squeezing the heel of that leg in towards your seat. Stand nice and tall. Hold for another breath or two, maybe another squeeze in, and then gently, gently release and shake everything out. Good. And the good news is we get to do all that on the other side. So if you're moving your chair, flip it. And if you're not, maybe just moving your body over to the other side, whatever you need to do. We're setting up for the goddess pose again. So, setting the feet nice and wide. And again, just a few soft bends up and down, and to reconnect with where it is that the knees want to go, and then adjusting the feet accordingly. Now, the knees are one place where we really never want to push it. Like, we do not want to feel pain in our knees because they're so tricky and so injury prone, or can be injury prone. So, just check in. Like, if it hurts to come down too deep, then don't. Just keep this really small. So finding just your comfortable, workable depth, and then drifting towards the chair. Let's lift up the outside heel. Let it down, drift back through center over to the other side. Heel lifts, and back through center. And straighten the knees. Lift the outside arm out, up and over. Spin down slightly. And then spin back. Inhale to lift up. Exhale to release. And we'll do the same work again, only this time option to go down that extra inch if you'd like. So coming down into goddess and shifting towards the chair. Heel lifts up if you'd like, holding the arm up. Drifting back through center to lift up the other heel. Letting that down. Come to center if you'd like, another inch. And then rising up. And last side bend here. Inhale to lift up. Exhale to come over. And again, spinning down perhaps. And up. And back. Good. And then inhale to lift up. Exhale to release. And draw the feet in. Shake everything out. We'll come into crane on this side. First though, just the mobility work of lifting this outside leg up and down 3 times. If you'd like, hand can rest on the hip. And release. And let's shift to the other side. So inside leg lifts up and down, and you're just trying to lift it as high as you can and then let it down. And then lastly, this outside leg again. Good. And then from here, letting that leg down, shake everything out. Option again to bring in the strap if you'd like, if it was helpful to kind of bring the leg up like that. Otherwise, using the hand. So this is more of a flexibility action because we're trying to bring the leg up maybe even higher than we could bring it without the help of the arm, and then hold it there. So strengthening the arm, you might be feeling that. Strengthening the glutes on the standing leg as you squeeze to stand straight. And the hip flexors working here as well if you're still consciously lifting the leg, using the leg muscles on top of what the arm is doing. Good. Holding for one more breath. Maybe lifting up another inch, and then softly, gently release that leg down to the ground and shake everything out. And again, to stretch through the hip flexors and the quads, we'll bring the strap in if that worked for you, like so. Or any version you can manage of capturing that foot, that ankle, and bringing it into position. So standing nice and tall. Bent knees reaching down from the ground as well as being pressed back in place. And this heel is being squeezed into the seat. So there's, again, that work being done in the arm of bringing the leg in. And stand tall. I notice myself collapsing here. So chest lifts, shoulders can slide back and down. Holding for one more breath. And then softly release and shake everything out. And then lastly, let's just do just a quick check-in. So find a comfortable stance. Just get nice and balanced here, centered. And close the eyes. The beauty of being a beginner is that you know nothing, so you expect nothing, really. You don't know what to expect. And that can make you more available, actually, to what is, to the present moment. So just a couple breaths to feel your way into that and back into your intention if you've drifted at all. And then when you're ready, opening the eyes, and we'll do our last standing pose. So for this pose, you want to be, here, let me show you. You want to be, actually here, there. Okay, you want to be facing your chair. And I'm just going to move my prop out of the way because I'm going to be using the seat, so I need space there. And again, just make sure you have, however you've got your chair set up, that you have some space behind you. So facing the chair, and then with the fingers splayed nice and wide, you're going to plant them on the seat of the chair. So you're coming down kind of into a tabletop position. And starting off, you might have the shoulders over the wrists and the hips over the ankles, and then I would suggest moving back just a touch, and maybe even setting the feet a little wider. And then we're going to start to circle over the wrists. Now we're doing this because we do tend to get issues with the wrists because we don't stretch or strengthen them really. So not a surprise if this is a challenge at all. You can keep these circles nice and small and not pour as much weight into the wrists if it feels like too much. For more challenge, you might tip forward more and load the arms more. Let's circle the other way. And if you're more forward and the shoulders are coming forward of the wrists, that's going to be a lot of stretch. So that's why I suggest stepping back a little bit. So again, this is something you'll adjust to your comfort level. Good. And then from here, let's walk the feet in. Rescue the hands. And just shake them out. And now you get to sit down again. So reset your chair if you need to. And find your comfortable seat. Now, because you might still be feeling that work in the wrists, let's stretch them out a little bit. So bringing the backs of the hands together, see if you can glue as much of the backs of the hands together as possible. And then I like to bring them into my body to kind of brace them there. So I'm pressing them into my body as well as into each other. Now, this is not a stretch we do that often, so you can expect to feel it. If you want a little less stretch, then maybe slide the hands down your body. If you want to go in deeper, then you might slide the hands up and drop the elbows down, still pressing into center. Still breathing. And then releasing, shaking the hands out. Let's do some circles with the wrists. So loose fists and circling in one direction. And then the other. And a nice nice little experiment that I like to run is wrapping the thumbs inside the fists, and same thing, so circling in one direction and then the other. And that can bring just a little extra zing to the movement, to what you're feeling. And then from here, release and just shake everything out. And then we'll come into our last twist. So sitting up nice and tall, setting up the feet about hip width. Let's bring the right hand, I'll mirror you, so right hand to the outside of the left knee. And the free hand will maybe hold on somewhere onto the edge of the seat, or maybe onto the back of the chair. And you'll be using both hands to kind of push and pull yourself into a twist, sitting nice and tall. Letting the shoulders drop down away from the ears. And then once you've got this, if you'd like, you can float the arm up as far back behind you as you can manage without lifting up that shoulder. So try to keep it dropped down and maybe even looking back behind you. Holding for another breath or two. And then unwinding, unraveling yourself, coming back to center. Let's find a little hip rock to reset. And then we'll do the same work other side. So left hand to the outside of the right knee, other hand reaches back for the side of the seat. Maybe onto the back. Drop the shoulders down again. And also notice, sometimes just by toning the belly, you can twist a little deeper. And then if you're taking this further, perhaps floating the arm up and reaching it as far back as you can. And also looking back. And then releasing to unwind, coming out of the twist. And again, we'll reset with that hip rock. And then last movement we'll do will be to stir the pot. So setting the feet nice and wide. Make sure you're far back. You still want to be on the front edge of the chair, but not so far that you're going to pitch forward and fall off. So just make sure that you feel secure. And we'll start off by leaning over to one side, enough that this arm gets nice and long, but I'm really holding onto the knee. It's kind of hanging off it. And then come forward. Both elbows will bend until you're over to the other side and your other arm is now long. And then almost hanging off both knees as you circle back in space, and then just continue that around. So this is a nice massage for the muscles here, and just a way to enjoy the space that you've created, the range of motion that you have now, having done your practice. So let's circle the other way now. And again, being curious about how circling in one direction might feel quite different than the other. So just being mindful of that. And then start to make those circles a little smaller, so spiraling inward. And then coming back to center, and you can toe heel wiggle the feet back into hip width. All right. And then here we're going to return to our beginner mind again. So setting up your position, your body in space for Shavasana, for that little bit of mindfulness and meditation that we do at the end of every class. So I like to be on the front edge of my seat because it helps me to sit a little taller than if I'm kind of leaning back, but it's up to you. Again, have your feet grounded on the floor. Your hands can be relaxed. Sometimes it's even nice to have the palms turned up in this kind of like attitude of receiving, as if you're receiving the gifts of your practice, yeah? That open-mindedness, open-handedness. And then close your eyes. And just feeling your breath here. Nice and deep, nice and full. And as you sit here, can you make space for anything that might feel new in your body at this point, at the end of your practice? Can you make space for whatever might feel new in your breath? And can you make space for whatever might be new in your mood or your state of mind? And then, if you'd like, bringing palms together, hands to heart, just to spend a couple more breaths with the intention that you set for yourself. Bringing your attention to your intention before you let it go. And then releasing your arms down by your sides. Spinning the palms out on your inhale, scooping up all this amazing energy that you've created for yourself. And on your exhale, bringing the hands back into the heart. Thank you so much for showing up today, for sharing your practice. And may this practice of beginner mind help you to cultivate an outlook that is fresh and full of wonder. Namaste.